Sometimes we think we know history well. The facts we learned in school, saw in movies, or stumbled upon on social media settle in our minds as unshakable truths. But history isn't always what it seems. Some of the most famous facts are actually lies that have been repeated for generations. And today, we're going to uncover a few of them. Are you ready? Because what you're about to hear, although believed by almost the entire world, isn't based on reality. Napoleon Bonaparte, military strategist, Emperor of France, and one of the most influential figures in history. But there's one thing that often comes to mind when people mention him: the idea that he was short. In reality, Napoleon stood around 5 feet 7 inches tall, which was average or even slightly above average for his time. So, where did this myth come from? First, France and Britain used different measurement systems. His height was recorded in French units as 5 feet 2 inches, which, when converted to British measurements, becomes about 5 feet 7 inches. Second, British cartoonists and the press used to mock Napoleon by portraying him as a short, egotistical man. It was propaganda. And after years of repetition, the lie stuck in the world's memory. If the word Viking makes you picture a wild warrior wearing a horned helmet, we've got some bad news. Vikings never wore horned helmets. Excavations, archaeological evidence, and historical documents show that Viking helmets were simple, functional, and hornless. So, where did the horns come from? In the 19th century, German composer Richard Wagner staged an opera called The Ring, and costume designers gave Viking characters horned helmets to make them look more dramatic. The visual effect was so powerful that popular culture accepted it as historical fact. But it was just theater. There's no real evidence supporting the horns. You were probably taught in school. When Christopher Columbus sailed across the Atlantic, people warned him that the Earth was flat and he might fall off the edge. Sounds like a powerful moment. But it's completely made up. In fact, as early as the 3rd century BCE, Greek scholar Eratosthenes had already calculated the Earth's circumference with surprising accuracy and knew it was round. Even in medieval Europe, educated people, the church, and scholars knew the Earth was a sphere. Columbus's challenge wasn't proving the Earth was round. It was that he wanted to find a shortcut to Asia by sailing west. His critics simply believed he had miscalculated the size of the Earth, and they were right. The flat Earth myth was invented by 19th century writers who wanted to portray Columbus as a bold hero, defying ignorant opposition. Yet it moves, a phrase famously linked to Galileo Galilei's defiance of the church. He's celebrated as the man who bravely defended the truth that the Earth orbits the sun, and was silenced by the church. This story is partly true, but in reality, it's far more complex and political. Galileo supported Copernicus's heliocentric model, but at that time, scientific evidence wasn't strong enough to prove it conclusively. Moreover, Galileo presented his ideas not through careful scientific debate, but in a provocative way that mocked church leaders. The church's main issue wasn't with science, it was with Galileo's confrontational style and the political tension of the era. He wasn't executed, just placed under house arrest. He was a controversial figure, clashing with both the church and parts of the scientific community. Not a simple hero, but a complex character. In movies, the word 300 brings to mind blood-soaked battles and fearless Spartan warriors. We're told that just 300 men, Leonidas's soldiers, defended their homeland against thousands of Persian troops. But history tells a different story. Yes, 300 Spartans did fight at the Battle of Thermopylae. That's true. But they weren't alone. Roughly 7,000 other Greek soldiers fought alongside them. Thebans, thespians and fighters from other city-states. While the Spartans stayed behind to make a final stand, the heroic resistance was not just their story, it was a collective effort of a Greek coalition. Films simplified it, because 300 against an army makes for a better, more heroic story. But this myth glorifies one group while erasing the bravery of many others. You were likely taught in school that Isaac Newton sat under an apple tree. An apple fell on his head, and suddenly he discovered gravity, like a light bulb moment in science history. But this story isn't exactly true. Newton only mentioned the apple story many years later while speaking with friends, and it was likely exaggerated in written accounts. He developed his ideas on gravity over decades. The apple might have been a metaphor that symbolized the spark, not the entire discovery. In fact, many historians believe Newton may have exaggerated the tale himself, simply to make his theory easier to remember and explain. This myth, however, became a symbol in books and cartoons. But great ideas rarely come from a single falling fruit. So what do all these myths show us? History is often simplified, exaggerated, and rewritten in ways that are easy to digest. We grow up believing these lies and rarely question them. But remember, the truth is always more fascinating. With this video series, we're uncovering the real stories behind history's biggest myths. And this is just the beginning. If you want to discover the truth behind more legendary lies, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment below. What famous fact do you think might actually be a lie?